Hello once more. Welcome back to our class, the third part of chapter 2, where we'll be covering starting from the regular plural nouns. Thank you. As we already said in the first two parts of this chapter, we studied through numbers, days of the week, months, saw how to say the date and introduce people. So here we'll continue with some basic grammar terms and most importantly, how to ask a couple of questions in French, followed by some dialogues. Let's go. The plural of regular nouns is formed by adding s. Please remember the term regular nouns to the singular noun in the written French. This s is not pronounced. Please keep that in mind. Note the following nouns and their plurals. Une vente. The plural will be des ventes. Une étudiante. The plural will be des étudiantes. Une collègue, des collègues. Un médecin, des médecins. So the S doesn't add any difference to the pronunciation. Now let's talk about yes or no question. A yes or no question elicits a yes or no answer. These questions can be asked in different ways in French. Let's see two ways to form them. We have the rising intonation. This is the most common form in spoken French among native speakers. You can change the statement into a question by just raising the intonation when speaking, or simply adding a question mark that's when writing. However, for beginners, I would advise you strongly not to use the rising intonation, for you might not be understood due to the lack of proper pronunciation. So I wouldn't really advise you to use the rising intonation, especially for the very beginners. So, for example, this is a declarative sentence. Je commence à travailler demain. This is very normal, declarative, simple. The intonation question mode will be Je commence à travailler demain. Je commence à travailler demain. Questions formed with est-ce que. The formula est-ce que may be placed at the beginning of a declarative sentence to form a yes or no question. It is used only to give more emphasis to the question. It does not really have a value and it's used in optional. What would mean here is est-ce que does not really have a value in English, but in French it's used purposely for asking questions. So just by adding the expression est-ce que at the beginning of an affirmative or declarative sentence would make it interrogative. Here we have je commence à travailler demain. Then the question, est-ce que je commence à travailler demain? Very simple. This one is much more practical and I do advise you to use this one. So let's go with this dialogue. Here it says, c'est le premier jour de travail de Muriel. Pierre Pradel, un employé qui ne connaît pas Muriel, parle avec Michel Journaud. Il veut savoir qui elle est. So this is the meaning in English over here. It's Muriel's first day at work. Pierre Pradel, an employee who has not yet met her, talks to Michel Journaud. He wants to know who she is. Here we go. Remember, there's a pronunciation over here in case you want to focus. Cette jeune femme, qui est-ce? C'est Muriel Melero. Muriel Melero, qui est-ce? C'est une nouvelle employée. Melero, est-ce qu'elle est espagnole? Non, elle n'est pas espagnole. Elle est française. Enfin, moi, je ne sais pas, je pense. Qu'est-ce qu'elle fait ici? Elle remplace Madeleine. Elle vient 4 fois par semaine. Mais elle part au printemps. Son contrat finit en mai. C'est dommage. So here we have the English meaning. Michelle, who is that young woman? That's Muriel Melero. Who is Muriel Melero? She's a new employee. Melero? Is she Spanish? No, she's not Spanish. She's French. Well, I don't know, I think. That's the place where he said. Enfin, moi je ne sais pas, je pense. Well, I don't know, I think. What's she doing here? She's replacing Madeleine. She comes 4 times a week, but she's living in spring. Her contract finishes in May. What a pity. That's what we said, c'est dommage. Or that could also mean that's unfortunate. So let's look at these keywords into this vocabulary. That's actually our goal here, to make sure that we know the expressions we use so that we can use them more often in our day-to-day conversation. Qui, who. Qui please pay attention to this pronunciation. It's pronounced qui est. Who is that? Cette, this or that. Cette femme, this woman. Or cet enfant, yeah. La jeune fille, the young woman, or fille actually means girl, so the young girl. Le jeune homme, the young man. Espagnol, Spanish. The E is for the lady, if the person is a lady. Je ne sais pas, I don't know. Ici, here. Par et per, by, like par semaine, per week, or a week, or by week. You understand? Par jour, per day, or a day, or by day. Fois par semaine, times per week. For example, 2 fois par semaine, 2 times per week, 2 times a week. Son contrat, her contract. C'est dommage. It's a pity. Or what a shame. Sorry. C'est dommage. Or that's unfortunate. Sorry. Now we have the seasons. Le printemps, spring. L'été, summer. L'automne, fall or autumn. L'hiver, winter. Note, to say in summer or in the fall or in winter, use the preposition en. Don't forget that. Very important. En été, en automne, en hiver. What about spring then? For spring, we use au. Au printemps. Au printemps. Elle part en été. She's living in summer. Elle part au printemps. She's living in spring. The following verbs appear in the dialogue. Partir, to leave. Finir, to finish or to be over. Venir, to come. Savoir, to know. Penser, to think. Faire, to do or to make. Note that penser is a regular AR verb. We've studied previously how to conjugate a regular AR verb. If you want to understand more about the irregular AR verb, if you want to review them, make sure you check the lesson concerning chapter 1 of this particular book. Therefore, it is conjugated in the present tense like all other verbs you studied in chapter 1. Let's have some tips here. We've learned in chapter 1 that there is a first large group of verbs in French whose infinitive ends in AR. We call it first group in French, premier group. There is a second group of verbs, but whose infinitives end in IR. The endings for this present tense are, remember, I explained earlier that for each particular tense, the verb assumes a specific group, meaning that the endings of a verb or a group of verb in a given tense is unique to the subject pronoun. Je is is, tu is is, il, elle is it, nous is isson, that's issons, vous is isse, issez, il is issent. Let's have a practical scenario over here. Je finis, not finis. Je finis, tu finis, il finit, nous finissons, vous finissez, ils finissent, which means to finish. I finish, you finish, he finishes, and so on. We have a couple more verbs that belong to the same group. We have here réussir, réfléchir, choisir, and remplir. Réussir to succeed, réfléchir to think about, choisir to choose, and remplir to fill. Let's talk now, that was about the regular IR verbs. What about the irregular endings, verbs, IR, the IR irregular endings? Let's see. We have a couple of them here. We have partir, which means to leave. Je pars, not je pars. Je pars, tu pars, il part, nous partons, vous partez, Il, elle part. That is the leave. Verbs like partir lose last letters. Example, we have dormir, servir, sortir. They behave similarly like partir. Je sors, just like je pars. So the last T is removed and S. But for the nouveau il, we bring back the T. Nous sortons, vous sortez, ils sortent. ENT. And then we have other irregular IR verb, venir. Je viens, tu viens, venir, which means to come, obviously. Je viens, I come, tu viens, il vient, nous venons, vous venez, ils viennent, they come. Then we have faire, which is an irregular verb, to do or to make. Je fais, tu fais, il fait, nous faisons, vous faites, ils font. Yeah, they make. Ils font. Yeah. Other uses of faire will be explained later in chapter 3. So remember that for each of these verbs, they are written differently with respect to the specific tense. As for now, we have been studying only the simple present tense, le présent de l'indicatif. And you need to be able to pronounce these verbs correctly, and also you should be able to write them correctly. So while you're practicing using this video, make sure you take the time to focus on the pronunciation and that you also get some time to learn how to write them by yourself. Now we have asking who is someone. How do we do that in French? Michel, qui est? C'est Muriel Melero. These are the question and answer forms used in talking about someone. Qui est? Who is that? C'est. Remember, even if you want to ask about a group of people, you still use the expression qui est. It doesn't change. Qui est? And you say c'est Michel, c'est Kanye et Ariel, or c'est Ricky et Abigail, for example. Note how a conversation continues. Muriel Melero, qui est? C'est la nouvelle employée. Muriel Melero, où est she? So if you want to know more about a specific person, use the question and answer form qui est. Okay, who is he? Qui est? C'est Abigail. She's Abigail. Abigail, qui est? Who is she? She is the secretary, elle est la secrétaire or whatsoever. C'est une. Secrétaire, c'est une. Employee, she's an employee. And what have we? So here we have, for example, nom Maxime Guerre, profession avocat. We saw already professions in chapter 1. Avocat means lawyer. Belge means he's a Belgian from Belgium. Qui est? C'est Maxime Guerre. Maxime Guerre, or Guerre, as per the pronunciation may be. Qui est? C'est un avocat belge. That's a proper example over here. Now let's talk about the negation ne pas. Basic negation in French, ne pas, a very simple structure. What happens is you always have to put the ne before the verb and pas after the verb you are negating. I do not know would be je ne sais pas. Remember we saw earlier, I know, je sais. I do not know, je ne sais pas. Sais is the verb to know and ne pas is the negation. He does not speak German. Il ne, the verb parle allemand. Il ne parle pas allemand. We are not students. Nous ne sommes pas étudiants. Nous ne sommes pas étudiants. In other words, the order of the negative sentence in the present tense is subject. It could be the noun or pronoun plus ne, then the conjugated verb plus pas, then the rest of the sentence. This is very basic. It works for each and every sentence. If the conjugation verb starts with a vowel or a silent H, ne becomes an apostrophe. Miguel n'est pas français. Miguel n'habite pas à Miami. Here we have a couple of tips. Ne pas is equivalent to the English not. Place is a matter of equivalence in terms of language, not translation. So don't ask what's the meaning of ne, what's the meaning of pas. Ne pas is the structure to express the negation, not in English. In the present tense, the verb is always placed before ne pas. Present tense. We are still working on present tense, remember? If the verb starts with a vowel or silent H, ne becomes an apostrophe. Now let's talk about stress pronouns. That's the last part of this chapter, and we'll be done with chapter 2. Stress pronouns. We have moi, which means moi, toi, lui, elle, nous, vous, eux, elle. Remember, they all correspond to the subject pronouns je, tu, il, elle, nous, vous, il, elle. And in English, they would mean moi is me, toi is you, lui is him, elle is her, nous is us, vous is you, eux is them masculine, and elle is them feminine. How do we use them? The stressed pronoun can be placed either before the personal pronoun or at the end of the sentence. For example, lui, il parle 4 langues, to emphasize on the person. Il parle 4 langues, lui. In English, we might sometimes omit this stress pronoun because here we say lui, il parle 4 langues, which means lui will mean him. Him. He speaks 4 languages. In English, we won't have that, so we're just going to say he speaks 4 languages. But in French, sometimes it's very necessary as compared to English. So, lui, il parle 4 langues, or il parle 4 langues, lui. Eux, ils habitent à Lyon, or ils habitent à Lyon, eux. We use it for what? For emphasis. The preposition chez, we saw it earlier, also means in the house of, or to the house of when used before a proper name or stress pronoun. Chez moi, in my house. Chez eux, due to the Z, chez eux, in their house. Chez vous, in your house. Chez nous, in our house. Chez elles, in their house, if they are only ladies. And chez toi, in your house, or chez lui, in his house. This is a couple of examples here. Il va chez Muriel. He is going to Muriel's house. Il va chez Muriel. Il est chez Muriel. He is in Muriel's house. Muriel est chez moi. Muriel is in my house. So remember, most importantly, it involves practicality. Make sure you always remember how to use it practically. And as I said, the reason we begin on this book is because it's not too grammarly directed, giving you the possibility to learn a couple of vocabulary, understanding some basic grammar, and be able to express yourself basically. Make sure you have to know the expressions by heart. You should be able to write them down as well, and probably you should be able to remember them at any time. If you do well to keep this, you should probably improve your French greatly. So, summary: this chapter have learned. In this chapter, we have learned what to say to introduce a person, when you are introduced or not introduce yourself, how to give the date, le, number plus month. We saw that. How to count beyond 70, precisely for people that are not in Belgium or Switzerland. Rest of French-speaking people, that's fine. If you're really interested how people do pronounce the numbers beyond 70 in Belgium and Switzerland, make sure to ask for it in the comment section, and I will do a video for that as well. Different ways of saying goodbye, how to use the preposition a and che, how to form regular plural, how to how questions can be formed, how to conjugate the IR verbs regular and a couple of irregular, not all of them, how to use the negation ne pas, and how to emphasize on the stress pronoun. So that was really a good time. At the end here, we have a couple of exercises. Make sure you do the exercises. And we also have the answer key, but try to do the exercises without looking into the answer key. Once you're done, look into the answer key. If there are still some things you don't understand, make sure to ask me, and I'll probably find a way to respond to or to clear your doubt. Thank you very much. That will be all for chapter 2. And probably the next video will be about chapter 3. If you haven't understood properly some terms here that was explained in chapter 1, you can do well to watch the video that will be talking on chapter 1. Thank you very much, and see you soon. Bye-bye.